Hi, everyone. So excited to be here, especially with my good friend Karl Dakin, and also with our good friend Omar, who actually beat the starting line with a first comment. So thank you, Omar, for getting us off to a good start. Omar runs a great program, Zoom Party, and also has some other shows that he does, but a very significant, consistent live streamer that we're happy to have in our community. So thank you for being here, Omar, and wishing you a happy May 20th. And today's show is focused around promoting and promotion, which is essential to about everything in life to some extent, depending on who you're communicating with. And chat's wide open. Omar shows that it does work, so it's safe to go into the water now. And with that, I'll switch it over to Karl, can give you a quick update as to where he is from where he was last time you saw him. And again, the word of the day is promotion. So, Karl, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Don. I really appreciate being a guest on your show, particularly this bright and nice day, Monday morning. I was sharing with Don before the show started that I was involved in a charity fundraiser over the weekend where I ran a 5K for the first time in 5 years. And I'm so happy that I'm sitting down at the moment instead of standing up. Uh, but promotion, that is the topic of the day, is key to almost everything. And since my business is raising funding, it's very, very important. In fact, it cannot happen. I kind of joke that I tell small businesses nobody can invest in you if they don't know you exist. And I guess there's a corollary to that is if you don't tell them you're raising funding, they'll never write you a check either. So even those who know you need to know that you're going to run a capital campaign. And I put out a daily newsletter called Instant Funding, and today's topic was on testing the waters, which is trying to get ahead of the entire game and going before I start spending massive amounts of money on a capital campaign and all the time it goes with it. Maybe I should check with my investor candidates and find out if they really are interested in what I'm offering, or am I off target? Am I going at it the wrong way? Am I talking to the wrong people? These are all parts of promotion. One is to make people aware, to let them know that you exist, then to tell them your story so they understand why you're talking with them. And one point that a lot of people leave out of promotion is that the story shouldn't be all about yourself. It should be about the person you're talking to. Failure to talk to someone and engage them about themselves and what they're interested in may be the worst form of promotion, because now you've just taken up their time and everything without them getting anything out of it. So, um, happy to be here today to talk about promotion, and I'm glad to see the audience is lighting up with comments in the chat. So, I'll see where we go from here.
Well, we're already off to a good start, like you say. And again, we mentioned Omar. We also have Terrence, who's a very fascinating individual, known him for a few years and have had some good conversations. Uh, Kerry has his joke of the day. Bacon and eggs walk into a bar. The bartender says, "I'm sorry, we don't serve breakfast here." Well, that's a cute one. Omar comes back, says, "I'm glad it works. Hi, Karl. Wonderful smiles from both of you." Well, it's nice that you focus on smiles and the positive nature of people. And I think that's promoting yourself in an indirect way because of the consistency of, in some ways, what they may call softening the market, which is getting some more exposures out there in a more, oh, unintrusive way, but it also builds top of mind awareness. And over time, when it is time, people already know a little bit about it, are a little conditioned, a lot more educated. Carrie says hello to Omar. And, what I've seen about promotion is not only what it is, but how you do it that's important. Too much self-promotion, just like anything else, is really about balance. And, how do you not sound like you're selling, at the same time not appear too meek, mild, and timid, and having someone always making the first move before you do. But it's practice. And I think the more you do something, especially with a goal in mind, something you could measure against, that's why, when you run ads, you usually track them, right? When you run them, what it cost you, what you get from it, what you learn from it. And then the next question, do I do it again, or do it again differently, or do I, kind of reserve that for a future date? And the other thing is having more horses in the race, I guess, would be a good way of looking at it, which also would be a challenge to specifically understanding. So if you did 5 things and you didn't know where that business came from, you might have to do all 5 things again just to make sure you didn't leave something out. So, testing is very important. And love to hear what everybody's thoughts on promotion is out there in the audience. And with that, what promotional campaign that you've engaged in, Karl, comes to mind as being something that surprised you in a good way?
In a good way. See, that last qualifier just
I know.
got, got rid of it. Good surprises as opposed to bad surprises. That makes it a very short list. Um, I think that I'm surprised sometimes when I post up a newsletter or I make a post in social media, and I get a lot of response. Ordinarily, you get 1 or 2, half a dozen comments, and knowing that that represents less than the tip of the iceberg, I'm okay with that. And I'd rather have even a few comments over nothing. Hearing crickets is hard to judge whether you missed the mark entirely or they just weren't present when the message arrived in their mailbox. So I've had a few things where I've appeared as a guest on a podcast or on a show like this, where I've gotten a lot of response. People call up and say, "Hey, yeah, I love everything you're doing." That's a fun surprise because that wasn't necessarily the goal, but it's always good to get accolades and attaboys from people who see your work and express their support for what you're doing. And it would be nicer if that happened all the time everywhere, but that isn't the way the world works. Uh, as you mentioned, you often will send out email posts or social media posts, and you do it 5 different ways. And that's just the simple recognition that everybody listens differently, everybody hears differently, and everybody is different. There's never a one size fits all that generally will get the job done. And so you have to work to piece together or weave together a number of results that may get you to where you want to go. We talk about in raising funding the term capital stack, which is simply an acknowledgement that one type of money from one source probably won't hit your campaign goal. You typically are going to have 2, 3, 4, or 5 kinds of money or money and other types of resources. So knowing that, you have to put your promotion out there to different audiences with different messages, seeking different outcomes, but collectively, strategically, they all work together.
Yeah, I mean, and there's so many facets to promotion. You could do a direct promotion where it's you and everybody you're targeting. You can do a promotion through something like LinkedIn ads, Google AdWords, get on Amazon. So really what you're doing is leveraging their community and having them alongside of you deliver the message, which has a little bit more authority and maybe credibility, but then also has a lot more expense. And the key is, again, qualifying return on investment. So if you spend $10 and make 11, you just made a good investment. If you spend $10 and got 9, you lost $1 in the moment. The question is there any continuing benefit, like thought, top of mind awareness, like planting a seed that one day will blossom and eventually come back to you. But I've always found in my advertising and promotional efforts that when the sale is over or the promotion is done, that's pretty much it. You know, they used to say newspaper, just like guest, in 3 days, whatever the thing, I know everybody knows it, but, the newspaper ad you run today is wrapped in fish tomorrow. So, and now we're talking newspapers, which is totally legacy and old style. But one thing about that, it was a singular event with one piece of paper going to a person. Now, when you're running AdWords or email campaigns or LinkedIn promotions, there's a lot more for you doing it. You know, it's a lot easier to write an ad, put it in something, and let it run. It's another thing to do all the front end work, all the individual personalized efforts. And it takes, like everything else, practice. And if you're not willing to go long term, it's probably not a good idea, because to start something and stop something and understanding longevity and also getting some expert advice again, because that's why people used to have advertising agencies, and they still do, is they would take 10% or 15% of the ad buy that you could have said, well, I could have saved that money or run more ads without them. But what is their expertise worth? And over what period of time will you get results? And whose responsibility and accountability is up for grabs? So there's a lot to it. I know we're talking more commercial, but just personally promoting yourself. Every time you meet a person, you're leaving an impression. Is that impression something that's going to be longer lasting, something that's going to touch a nerve, make somebody want to do something with you? And I think that's an important thing. You kind of like open the jar before you try to fill it. And surprising people is never a real good technique when most people don't understand who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it. And I always question, why am I so lucky for a stranger to find me and offer me some unbelievable offer, which makes you wonder, maybe it isn't an unbelievable offer or coming from a credible source. So I think if you blend promotion in everything you do, so it's not just a singular independent event. So I know Karl does a wonderful newsletter every day and now also started a weekly one. It's a good time to put something in there that might be of interest, but it's not the thing. Because if you ran a newsletter every day and just said, here's my book, I'm selling it today, you're probably not going to get a great following. If it's an aside that says, and by the way, I'm going to be in Cincinnati next week giving a book tour, or here's my schedule if you're interested in knowing. And I think information and value of the information is what the, let's say, receiver looks at. And I think that's key. So there's a lot of, let's say, unraveling the onion here. And I know, Karl, you're primarily involved with funding, and there's a lot of promotion to that, which is individual promotion to whoever it is. But I also know that once you get one, it's easier to get two. So if you have somebody who's already in for half of the amount, it's easier to go to the second person, and that alone says, well, I'm not the first. The other person probably did some due diligence or knows this person or has a feeling and already committed. So it's really getting that first hit, let's say, and also being able to leverage what they have to make that investment better, because at the same time, one person out of two is not going to go forward without that second or third one either. So, you're climbing the ladder, but you haven't arrived at that point. So how do you handle that delicate situation?
Well, I think that every time I'm pitching somebody for funding, that I have to remember that what I need isn't necessarily what they need. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're talking to. You have to understand where they're coming from, what they're about, and you have to be honest with yourself and asking, am I doing something or asking them to do something that's good for them? And in most cases, you're not. It's good for you, but it's not good for them. And so you expect that you're going to get turned down, and it isn't a rejection where they're saying you're bad, we disagree with you, anything that's negative. It's saying it's just not good enough for that person that you're talking to. So so much promotion is dependent upon doing good marketing analysis and collecting data up front and understanding who you're talking to. If you go to someone who looks like they're like I did after the 5K race on Saturday, and somebody offered me a bottle of water, it was a pretty good bet I was going to take that bottle of water. I was going to drink it because I looked like I needed that bottle of water, and it would have been a fair, fair proposal or promotion. But if I'd gone to that same person and I'd offered them, box of hot wings, maybe it wouldn't have gone over so well. And we could work our way down. And so promotion is sharing your story, it's telling your story, but it's intended to do it in the right way to achieve an outcome or a reaction that you're looking for. But it has to match up with that person, a square peg in a square hole, round peg in a round hole kind of a thing. And too often, we get carried away doing promotion that not only doesn't achieve our goal, but it tends to demonstrate disrespect for the person you're talking to. Kelly Steineke, who's one of my mentors, along with you, Don, talks about the slap pitch, where somebody reaches out and says, hey, you're kind of a worthless person, but I can make you a millionaire overnight if you just give me a whole bunch of your time and money. And the fact they don't know you or anything about you or whether there's a match for whatever it is they're offering, they don't care. They've bought a mailing list. They're going to spam you. I had an eye doctor appointment on Friday with a brand that I won't name here, but they said, well, what's your feedback? I said, as a doctor, you're wonderful, but if you send me one more email, I'm going to fire you. I said, you're just way over the top. You're killing me every time I have to just ignore your email for something I'm supposed to do maybe once a year. So what's the deal? And as of this morning, I got 2 more emails. How are your doctor? I don't think they're listening very well to what I was saying. So I think promotion is storytelling in its best form, but it has to be in the mind of the recipient. We talk about communications, conversation being a two-way street. If there's only one person talking, you're not communicating. You're preaching, posting, boasting, whatever you're doing, but you're not getting the job done. So find out first what the person wants to hear, what they're interested in, make them part of the conversation, and then figure out how your story and their story blend together so that you do something together rather than do something separately. And but so much promotion is started with no planning, no prep, no understanding, to just throw it out there. And social media makes it so simple to say, well, I sent out 100,000 emails this morning. I said, so what? You made 100,000 people upset because they got email they didn't want. I don't think you're on the right track here. Maybe you're misunderstanding how communication works.
Well, you make a great distinction there because I think the focus has to be naturally on the audience of who you're attracting. And then a qualifier, is this a brand new audience or is this an existing audience? Are you familiar with these people or are they strangers? And unless you're personalizing something that could be a mass, let's say, message, it's going to ring on ears that aren't that receptive. And most people think more is better, but better is better. And it's better to be small and to the point and get some attention than just throw it out. Now, social media does have its benefits because if you look at LinkedIn, they allow you to post or do a newsletter or a poll or a video or whatever. But it's only one message that goes out to 1 billion people, possibly. And that allows everybody to pick and choose, and no one takes it personal. Because if you see a post, you don't do anything with it. You forgot there was even a post and you didn't remember anything. So it's almost like amnesia in a sense that you're not going to hurt anybody by what you say unless what you say is hurtful. And that's another element of messaging, is not to be offensive, not to make anybody possibly feel bad that doesn't have to. And also your tone. Is this 24 hours only? Must, one time, if you don't take advantage of it, it'll never be here again? Or is it a conversation? More like, by the way, and also being able to connect with that individual to say, by the way, I see you're an expert in the building industries, or I notice your company is located in my town. And at that point, well, you say, well, the person did a little bit of homework, right? They took a little bit of time to know who I am or what I do. And that makes it more relevant as opposed to, stranger when I met, stranger when I left. And worse is inconvenient, right? This person just took up my time, took up some of my thought, and all of a sudden turned it into a negative, which then creates a skepticism towards anybody else who may not have been like that, because once you start smelling and seeing it, you start putting on your defensive, uniform, and that's a challenge. And what you want to do is do something that's sustainable, something that even if someone doesn't like, they don't dislike. So if you can't win, don't try to find something that makes you look or feel like a loser or your audience. Linda's here. Linda's a good old hand here, has been here probably since the beginning of this show. Got internet to connect first time. Yay, great discussion. Well, what you learn, and not everybody understands this, Linda, is when you depend on technology, technology is a big factor in whatever you use it for. Right. And even when we started the show today and Karl's voice and picture came through, hey, that's two marks right in the right direction, because, a lot of times it just is part of it. And you really can't be responsible, although you're accountable to it, because I had a show last week where I was staticky the whole time. I ended up buying a brand new laptop yesterday so that and the problem with that may be is it wasn't the equipment. And all of a sudden now I got an extra laptop, but I do believe the equipment was in a position to be upgraded and optimized from where it was anyways. But, you want to have a clear path, and like I say, technology issues, delivery issues. Did you get it? Did you read it? And I think that's where open rate makes a big difference. So if you send a message, how many people actually viewed it? I think that's where analytics comes into play. So you can say, whatever it is, you're at a starting point, right? So if you got 3 responses first time, second time, did that grow? Who responded? Are they your ideal audience? So, it's kind of like getting your eyes checked. They say A or B, 1 or 2, and you go through all these different lenses, and finally they zero in and say, here's your prescription. You got to keep balancing that, throwing things out. And I think Karl made a good point. Feedback is always great when it comes independently to you. When you have to ask somebody every minute, what'd you think? And probably they didn't see it. They didn't care about it. They didn't think it. You're actually asking someone to do the homework you should be doing. It's like asking somebody to close the sale for you, or to ask to buy before you've even asked to have them buy. And, everything we're talking about is how you, again, go to market. How's your projection? How's your packaging? How's your presentation? Did you do enough? Did you do too much? Did you catch everybody on the first line or the headline? And that maybe allowed them to go to the next line. Because I think another thing people don't take into consideration is what's good for you is good for people like you. So how you react to something, how you respond to something is pretty much how everybody else is going to act and respond to that same approach or method that you might use. And I think because there's the ease of communication and the access is so available, they used to say it takes 5 or 6 exposures for someone to get the message. So if you watched a Coca-Cola commercial, after about 6 times, you kind of got it. Because the first time you might have been going to the bathroom when the commercial came on, you might have been focused on something else. But after about 5 or 6 times, and that's why companies use the same commercial. They're so expensive to produce. Where we do a post and think everybody's seen it and we're getting redundant the next time we promote it. And that's never the case. So I think it's all those elements, but the key now is that was traditional marketing. If someone got you in a Super Bowl ad, and paid, I think it was 5 million or 10 million now for an ad, they're going to try and use that ad as much as they can, get as much value. Now what they're saying, like LinkedIn, it takes about 22 impressions for someone to get the message, because that's all it is messages. If you go through your feed, it never ends. If you go through your network, it never ends. So you have to do a better job of being consistent. That's why daily is always the best, because if they don't see you on Tuesday, maybe they'll see you on Thursday, but if they'll bound to see if they're seeing anything through that time. And second guessing oneself in the middle of a process is counterproductive. Maybe this is too, anytime you start with maybe this is, it says, I really don't know, and all of a sudden your feeling starts to project on everybody else. Well, no one responded, so it had no value. Well, depending on what it is, like Karl says, sometimes I get 60, 70 comments, sometimes you get 4. A lot of it has to do with other people's lives. Were they busy? Were they preoccupied? Was this a day where the Super Bowl was playing? Was this a holiday where no one was watching? But again, that gets balanced out and evened out over the consistent time. And if anything else, you're going to take advantage of people who aren't doing things to their advantage. So with that said, I know we cover a lot of ground, but promotion is something I've always been deeply involved in. I had a significant retail operation and spent gobs of money. At one time, I was spending $120,000 a month on Google AdWords alone. And that was 12 years ago when dollars had more value and nobody was using Google. But I figured out a way how to subsidize it with all co-op dollars. So it was just switching from print to something else. So, but it didn't start that way. It probably started with $100, buying a few ads and then taking time to understand it, analyze it, and come back with it. And I know this seems so challenging for a one-person operation because, funding is always a little bit challenging, and staying with a long-term approach is kind of difficult if you don't have the ability to sustain, or you don't have the confidence in your ability or its ability to do something. And too many people are in for a little, but not in for a lot, and keep going back to the starting line. So, Karl, I know with everything you're doing, all the companies you're working with, they always have a promotion opportunity or a challenge. And, I think anybody who can bring value beyond their direct value. So you could be excellent at raising money, but if you had some extra skill sets like, hey, I've got a way to do live streaming with you, or introduce you to this person who's an expert at this and build out the team a little bit. How do you see all this?
Well, I was just thinking through your comment about TV commercials and time invested. So I checked the internet quickly, and the average cost of a 30-second TV commercial is $100,000. So I figured this show alone is at $1.2 million value, and we spent a little bit less than that to put on the program this morning. So, and I don't know if we can count this as 120 different repetitions of a 30-second commercial. So we're driving our message home. But I think it's so important, as you're telling your story, that you're keeping in mind who's listening to you. What is the story that you're trying to tell? And if it's someone who doesn't know you, you can't assume much of anything, no matter how much market testing you did. So that message kind of comes across as exploratory. So when I get comments and messages in LinkedIn, I'll get people saying hi. And you're like, okay, I guess the correct response is hi back at you. Other people will say, I see you're in the same group, which indicates that, yeah, maybe we're part of the same billion people on LinkedIn, but it's still not very informative to me as to what the conversation is going to be about. And I tried to address that by saying, it sounds like you're looking for maybe some help. I might be able to help you. I don't know, but here, fill out this assessment form, and if that works, then good. But when somebody comes to me and they're very definitive about their needs and what they're looking for, then that helps tell me, is there something that we can do together or not? And it's almost like a invitation to come participate in a game or be part of a team, or do something of that nature, where you can immediately sense that there's a commonality or there's a basis for doing something. And one of the comments you made earlier is that too often an advertisement is here today, gone tomorrow, forgotten maybe even before you move the newspaper. And this is something we're seeing as a common pervasive problem in promotion, is that people tend to treat everybody as though we're a transaction. That I need you to wait on me at the restaurant and get me a hot cup of coffee, not thinking about the fact that if I don't tip this person, then tomorrow, if I come back for a cup of coffee, it may be cold, it may be late, so forth and so on. And so part of what we've been talking about on on other shows and other things is building a community of people who work together and support each other. We're looking at building relationships that extend beyond a single transaction to a whole series of transactions where we have some common benefit. And that elevates your game, because you don't have to buy an ad and then buy another ad and then buy another ad, because we've brought somebody on board. They talk about what is the cost of getting an employee on the first time, and then what's the cost of training somebody to replace them. It's the same thing with customers. It's the same thing with relationships. How much time and energy can you afford to invest in creating a brand new relationship? And we had a great conversation in our cohort last Thursday, which I'm still running over my mind, where we were trying to distinguish between retention of our current relationships and creating new relationships, and what was the most effective way of doing that. And then it turned out that, yeah, there's multiple ways to be effective. Some are good for one type of meeting someone and some for another. And that means now we have to have kind of an array or spectrum of different ways of promoting and talking about ourselves. And even on using LinkedIn Live today, we're going to reach certain people. The good news is it's keyword searchable. It's in the database forever. If you couldn't make this moment in history where we're doing this broadcast, you can come back and find it later and listen to it at another time. So if I just sent an email and they didn't see it, that email is probably lost, just like the advertisement in the newspaper. But this type of program has carrying power because you can find it, see it, and listen to it at another time. And then we still look at other forms of communication. Not everybody has time for LinkedIn Live. So is a newsletter better? Is a poll better? Is some other type of a sponsorship of a charity like I was doing over the weekend? All these ways are forms of promotion, and some will resonate with some people, not with others, and some people will see them sometimes and not see them in other cases. So you have to be strategic in order to make best use of your time in how you tell your story, where you tell your story, and acknowledging that because people are so different in so many different ways, we have to put our story out there in different fashions so people can see and hear it in different ways.
Yeah, those are some excellent points because, what we're dealing with, especially on LinkedIn, is the two-way communication. Coca-Cola just projects it out on a Super Bowl ad, and there is no feedback directly at the time. The feedback is, did someone go to the grocery store and buy some Coca-Cola after the week after, and what markets did you advertise in? How much were sales there versus markets you didn't advertise in? And the key is you have information through LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook that you can look at everybody you're about to target and say, hey, I saw you went to Michigan State. I went there at this point, right? And all of a sudden you got some familiarity. Safety is what most consumers put as top priority. How am I not going to get hurt is the first thought, especially if it's not Coca-Cola, because that's a natural brand everybody's aware of. They know what happens when you buy it, when you drink it. But when someone wants to sell you insurance, it really does help to have a little bit of a context. Well, I talked to your best friend, Jim. He said you might be in the market for insurance. I thought I'd follow up. Well, why doesn't someone do a little bit of homework, especially when the homework costs you a few minutes and you're asking somebody to invest $10,000 maybe in a policy? And, it has to be fair. And you don't want to come across as someone who's no one can see, who, people are not spending the amount of attention that they should. Here's an interesting person, Alan, who I've actually been having a conversation through messaging on LinkedIn. Rational capital required for partnership with Google to provide ongoing methodology to eliminate traffic congestion. That's a little more detailed. But, I think the key is curiosity is key, and getting someone's curiosity to peak, to say, I want to learn more. I want to know more. And sometimes if you talk about it and not them, that might be a way. Like International Harvester just came out with a tractor and it does these amazing things, right? If you're in agriculture, that's pretty good information. And then, by the way, I represent a dealership here, or if you want more information. And I think there is middle ground, since it's going to take, let's say, 20 impressions. Well, how do you stage that? If it's going to take 20, why say everything out front the first time and either never say it again or repeat it 20 times versus, well, who opened the envelope? Who showed some interest? What I found to be most effective about LinkedIn is that I've changed my whole strategy to responding to someone who takes the first move. So someone who reaches out to connect with me, that's a first move on their part. Someone who comments, someone who's in the audience, somebody who saw my profile, who's looking at you. And the only reason they're looking at you is something happened to make them want to look at your profile, because there's a billion of them. Why would you just choose anybody? But usually it's or it's a poll. And lately, the polls have been very effective, and most people look at it as superficial. And, so in other words, like my average poll gets about 90 responses every day. Out of those 90 responses, there's usually 3 or 4 people that I may not know, or people that I know and want to know better. And they just rang my doorbell, right? And it wasn't a direct approach, they just answered a poll. And now my polls are pretty positive in general. So, like on Mondays, I'll say, "Are you optimistic about your week ahead?" And you wonder, why would someone say no? Usually it's like 90% yes and 10% no. And I wonder who is the one who said no, or it's not going to be a great week, because they're just exposing themselves as somebody who's not very positive and would take an action just to communicate that. But it's so much easier than to say, with gratitude, "Thank you so much for taking the time to take my poll. I was very, I took the time to see your profile, and I noticed that we have all this in common. And I think you might be a great guest on the show." So you could have just said, "Thanks for the comment," and that would have probably fell flat. You could have said, "Hey, you're a great candidate for the show," and people say, "Well, where did that come from?" That's right to cutting it to the chase. Versus, "Hey, I like this about this and this about this, and it may justify this, but let's have a Zoom call." And then you'll see how deep and how interested that party is. Sometimes, if all they don't even say something, "Well, thank you for taking a poll. If you're interested, it's out there." It also, the nice thing about messaging on LinkedIn, you have a history of it. And sometimes you can forget who you reached out to. And I look and say, "Well, I just reached out to this person 2 weeks ago and they never responded to it. I'm not going to go back to that person again." 6 months from now, if I still have an interest, I may say, "It's been a while since we communicated. Love to know what you're doing and how things are going." But a no will give you direction, and a yes will give you a green light in most cases. But a lot of people reach in areas that they shouldn't be in because there's nothing else going on. So their lack of activity creates more activity on their part that will probably not get as much benefit. And that's why I think you have to have it kind of categorized as, here's my primary group. So if you identify, let's say at the first of the month, here's my top 10 prospects, or here's 10 people I'm working with or through, and I'm going to put them at the top of my list to see if we can keep this conversation moving in the right direction. Well, here's a second tier. Might be brand new people that fit the first 10, but they haven't been cultivated. And then maybe here's a pool of 30 that, fit, but for whatever reason, and that's it. And then you can personalize. The top 10 are going to get this much attention. The next 10 will get this type of message. The next 30, I guess you want to raise to the second level, and you want to raise the second level to the first level. And that way you're not shotgunning, and not everything is right for everybody, and not everybody's right for you. And even if you attract them now, what was the why? Because now you have a commitment to have a Zoom call. You have a commitment to offer them a show appearance if everything works out. And is that the key? So I think there's so much time in activity and not enough time in reflection, in review, in optimizing the message. How do you make it better, not how do you make it bigger? Because it's always easier to make it bigger after it's better. It's awful hard to make it better after it's already bigger, because the foundation's already built. And plus, everything you're doing is modeling for the people who follow you, who respect you. And somebody say, "Well, if Karl's doing it, it must be good. Let me start doing it." Right? And sometimes that's true. But sometimes you're not Karl. Everybody's in their own place at their own time, dealing with their own situation. And that's why so many people end up with tunnel vision, or blinders on, is they're just going direct, nonstop, caution to the wind. And I think that, what you want to do is build a foundation that you're not talking to new people all the time. You continue to build the conversations with existing people. And after a while, everybody will tell you what you need to know. They'll be sincere and they'll just say, I love what you're doing. I don't have the time right now. I love what you're doing. I don't have capital available right now. But in June, something's going to change. Something may happen here. Please stay in touch, or let's schedule something for the fall and let's have an update. And I think, if you're coordinating it and synchronizing it together, no one's pushing or pulling anybody. You're walking side by side. And plus, a lot of times, if you get the same objection or concern, maybe it's your responsibility to take care of that concern, that if everybody's saying it, it can't be just them. It has to be in relationship to what it is. And maybe there's some middle ground. So, Karl, I know this is, some art as well as science, if you can call promotion. And I think, just like we talk about Coca-Cola, and that's just a company we picked out of the air, they want to entertain. They want people to feel better about seeing the commercial, not just buying the product. That's why they always show a hamburger that's perfectly made, right? The sizzle's already there, the pickle, the tomato, the ketchup, the mustard, the bun, because they want to not only show you, but allow you to feel it. That's why a lot of movies now, they're having chairs that vibrate, and they can put smells out there to relate to the theater. It's that extra sensory perception. And that's where virtual reality can come in, but at the end of the day, you're still a human dealing with humans, and there has to be some humanity to what you're doing in order to put you a cut above. So looking at the future, and I know you're heavily involved in AI and very interested in it. And I think if you're not, you should start to get conversational about it, because it's going to be here and it's building on itself. It's kind of funny, in the past, someone invented something like a printing press, right? I mean, they had to design it, they had to manufacture it, they had to build it, and then they had to maintain it. Now machines are getting better with their own knowledge, and the horse is out of the gate. And, a lot of times, people look at newness as scariness. And the reason why it's scary is it requires change. The person was happy to get their Sunday newspaper, and I'm old enough to know that on a Sunday, you almost needed two people, especially around Christmas, to bring it in the house, right? It had so many sections, and they were so big. And actually, you would pull out the sections that you had time for if you were in the sports or you're in the business. Now you don't have the weight of it, but you have the width of it. Do I go to Google? Do I go to MSN? Do I go here? Do I go here first? How much time do I spend? And it's kind of fascinating that people were always introduced to something as a time saver. And it becomes a time sucker after a while. Because I remember going to the grocery store and never having to call home to say, I'm at the grocery store. I've got 8 items. Is there anything else? You just bought what you remembered. And a lot of times you even made a list so you didn't have to call. And sometimes life went on. And somehow you got home and somehow you did this. And now it's like, even the telephone tells you, well, you spent 6 hours on your screen time last week, up 15%. And yes, those 6 hours times 50 is 300 hours, which equates to half a month of your life was spent on the phone. And, at what point do you say enough is enough? And how do you discipline yourself and say, I got a budget, of time. And here's where I need to prioritize that time. So, what's your thoughts, Karl? I mean, this is such a dynamic, changing marketplace.
Well, it is changing, and so we're seeing so many new things that I will say, by and large, most people don't understand. And this is one of the parts of promotion I will address, I guess, in my comments now, is that sometimes somebody will see something that you want them to react to buy or do something with, and they immediately comprehend it. They see it, they know what it is, they appreciate the value, they can make an immediate decision on whether to buy, not buy, or ignore, or do something else. Same thing with a person. Sometimes it's like, I just met someone, and man, nice person, doing good work, kind of person I may want to have help me or team with on a project. But more often, there are steps, there are stages. So we talk about getting to know you, to date before you get married, to walk before you can run. And there are lots of new things coming at us today that we kind of need to learn more about. We're going to have to wrap our minds around it and give it some consideration. Is it truly something I need to have, or is it simply going to be helpful? Can I replace something I'm already using? So when I'm pitching, as an example, an investment, I typically talk about a 3, 4, or 5 stage series of meetings where I have to first make them aware. Then I have to give them some information. Then I have to answer questions. I may have to do a demonstration. I may then, go through the close, which is, let's make a decision, yes, no, in or out. But I can't do all that in a single event. And part of it is because that person is getting up to speed. They have to learn more. They may have to hear me, trust me, or the person who's making the pitch. And so the relationship's evolving at the same time information is being exchanged. And I think that that's an important part of promotion that a lot of people forget, is they go like, here, buy this. And you're going, I don't even know what this is. I can't even make a qualified decision on the buying or not buying it, because I have no idea what you're talking about. Um, and uh, and so as you're promoting something that may be new, not necessarily to you, but to someone else, again, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the listener, the person you're talking to, and say, did they even understand a word I said? And if they can't get that, can they understand the outcome of use, or what the result may be, what the benefit could come from this? Because we may never teach them quantum mechanics, on teleportation devices. They're like, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. You don't have to. You can get from here to here in 2 seconds. Oh, okay, fine. I'm on board. So I think as we're talking about promotion, we need to give them enough information that they can make a decision. We have to overcome, as they call it, the challenges or objections. We have to demonstrate value of what we're trying to convey. And we have to give them the process by which they can make a decision. Sometimes that decision is complicated in its own right. Let's go, yeah, I want one of those. Well, okay, now, because this is a security, I need you to sign here, show me your driver's license, go over here, ring the bell 3 times and come back before you can give me any money. And they go, why would I do that? And I said, I don't know why you would do that. But that's what the law says. So here we are. I think that promotion is it's everywhere. It permeates everything we do. We got to be in it all the time, whether we're promoting ourselves or our company or products, a cause, or whatever we're doing. But it's telling the story from the standpoint of the listener, and understanding that the listener may need help in hearing the story and seeing the story, appreciating the story, which is why Coca-Cola, may need to repeat the story. I once heard that Coca-Cola defined itself not as a beverage, but as entertainment. They wanted, when you drink it, to have the experience be the primary reason why you bought it again in the future, not that it quenched your thirst at a particular moment. I think we need to take that same kind of thinking into our promotional efforts and ask ourselves, well, what is truly the person getting out of this? If we understand that, then telling them a story becomes more straightforward, even if I have to take 4, 5, or 10 steps to do it.
Yeah, that is so astute because it really comes down to in a lot of cases, packaging and presentation. So it is what it is, but by itself, on its own, it's not enough, right? If you said, I sell soft drinks, well, that's still kind of confusing. If you say, I sell colas, well, that's going to appeal to the cola audience. But for some reason, there is a Pepsi population and there's a Coca-Cola population. And there are people who say, and I probably believe them, that, hey, this isn't Coke, this is Pepsi. Or this isn't Pepsi, it's Coke, I can't drink this. And at a certain point, one has to guard themselves against themselves, because I remember when blockchain came out, right? And that was right around when crypto was coming out. Well, anybody who started reading about blockchain could see what it means and could see what the future is. And they got so enamored by it that when they went out to market, it was like, you're missing the boat. This is the greatest thing since sliced bread and everything else. And most people don't feel like they're missing the boat. Most people feel like the boat is never going to not be there, right? So the key is why would you invest? And how many people in the stock market invest in a name, have no idea what they do, how much they're making, how do stocks like GameStop go from almost bankrupt to $40 billion and go back to almost bankrupt again, or movie shows. Why? Because some people have figured out how to promote it so well that nobody wants to miss the boat. Fear of loss is a bigger motivator than greed. And people will fight like hell to keep what they got, but they won't do anything to get more, right? So if I said, I'm going to go pick up your car today, it's like, you're not getting it. But if I say, hey, you could buy a brand new Lincoln if you just added a little bit more income and did this, and most people would say, hey, I'm happy. Really not sincere about it, but change is hard. And knowing that change is the biggest qualifier, how do you make change softer, easier? How do you hold their hand for a little bit if you have to? And I think that's so important, because it's the people who go the extra mile. And some people never go the first mile. The people who do more, and they did more than they had to, or that you're used to. Follow it up with something. Thanks for taking the time today. I'd like to, and that used to be a big deal. I know when I was always looking for vendor money, there'd always be companies who were involved with whatever media, and they would do presentations with you, getting paid by the media to build that fund for your marketing efforts. And a lot of times they were very creative. If you're promoting lawnmowers, well, they'd send a little miniature lawnmower in a little box with a note, with a ribbon, with a piece of candy, and maybe it would cost $7. But if you only had 20 suppliers, you were focused on what's $140 for someone to get a box of muffins one day from you. And I think people try to do big things in small ways, and it comes across as being small, right? So you can't have an expansive message and a wonderful forecast, and they get chintzy during the time because it doesn't support the projection you're trying to have. And today, it's never been easier to have a conversation. With Zoom, with LinkedIn. Before you had to get the yellow pages out, or you had to buy a list. You had to do a lot of cold calling. Most of it was local, and it was harder to break into. Now everything's up for grabs. Everybody's kind of open. And as the market matures and more people get more sophisticated, everything gets easier. I always found in my career that the smarter the person was, the easier it was to share something with them. Because if you got to talk to someone who knows nothing about what you're talking to, the learning curve is so difficult. Or the trust factor becomes key. And if someone says, hey, you got a great reputation, Karl, everybody I talk to loves working with you, hey, I'm happy. You don't have to go into the whole dog and pony show or song and dance. I appreciate it. Happy to get information, but I'm a trusting person based on the referral. Because if Jim told me he's doing it and I should do it, I believe in Jim. And I'd love to believe in you, but that's not necessary. If you don't have that Jim in the middle, then you are the person. And again, treat people like you want to be treated. More importantly, treat people like they want to be treated, and ask them easy questions. A lot of times, even after the rejection, that's the time to learn. And it's not time to reverse it. When someone has a definite no, respect it, because no one wants to get sold, right? But it's like, hey, I know it's not for you. I'd love to know what was it that didn't resonate. I don't want to even come back to the sale. It's done. I'm happy with your response. What was it I could have done or didn't do or did too much? Because I'd love to get better at this. And there may be something that I wasn't aware of, or it might be something that would benefit you just in knowledge. And I think that's courtesy. And if you treat everybody with respect, with courtesy, with civility, that means something, because you said, hey, that person didn't try to twist my arm. They were just interested in my thoughts, and they thank me, and they're not coming back tomorrow with the answer to my question that I just shared with them yesterday, but they make you better. That saying I always use, give me a yes or give me a no, but don't put me in the purgatory of maybe, because I don't know what to do. I don't know to come back. I don't know if you're sincere, and I'm kind of stuck. And when you can move on, it says they weren't essential in a good way. Like, I have more fish to fry. I've got more people to talk to. If you're ever interested, and then it's also an opportunity to get a referral, right? By the way, I know this doesn't work for you, and I fully appreciate that based on your situation. I understand completely and agree with you. But if you know somebody or will in time meet somebody, I'd be happy to share with them this opportunity. You got to keep your doors open, but you also have to keep everybody's minds open too. And you can make a sale by forcing, by pushing, and there's people who are really good at it. Somehow they can get through the day and not feel awful about upsetting 12,000 people to get 2 buyers. But if that works for them. But the long term is be a good person, have integrity, have compassion and empathy for who you're talking to, and especially respect people's time and situation. And I think that'll go a long way towards how you promote. And it is the community image. I'm sure, people like Home Depot, I think they take 2% of their profit in every market and put it back into the community, because they want to build goodwill. They want to show themselves as a good corporate citizen. And to some people that resonates. And if nothing else, it's just a good thing to do. So I know we're way over. We're 3 minutes over. Gosh, I have to discipline myself more. With that said, Karl, last words?
I just find it a privilege to be on this $1.2 million promotional effort. And I will tell the audience, I want everybody to understand that we did this for a lot less than 1.2 million, actually a lot less than $100,000. But it still may have greater impact and greater reach and greater searchability than a simple commercial. So lessons to be learned in how you get your story out there, how you share and promote yourself, and what you're doing with everybody else. And this is a demonstration of that. So thanks, Don, for letting me be a guest on your show here this morning.
Well, thank you, Carl, because I learned as much or more from you and from the audience from every show. And, it is a privilege to be able to share experiences that we all paid for dearly, that other people can benefit from without paying that price. So there is a lot of goodwill that's involved, and sincerity is someone has to ask themselves, why is someone doing this? And if the reason is to leverage what they know, share what they know, provide enough information that someone can qualify you after 6 or 7 of these shows, and know that we're here for each other and for the community. With that said, thank you very much. I'll just share with you tomorrow's show, which is going to be fascinating. It's Beverly Glazer, who's here every Tuesday. We have Lance Slayton, who's an amazing individual who Beverly introduced me to. Beverly makes so many quality introductions. He's got a caregiving operation out in Michigan. He also has a couple assisted living centers. But what's so cool is he became a master YouTuber. And I think he has at least, it's either 100,000 or 1,000,000 subscribers. He does so many things, but he has hardly any penetration or exposure on LinkedIn. So that'll be kind of fun to see how, and he grew this business with his wife, who actually it all started when they graduated college together in Michigan. And Lance's dad, who was a veteran, had a procedure and needed caregiving, and they brought him into their home. And based on the resources available and everything else, found a big opportunity for someone to do it right. Wednesday, we've got Jason Gerardo and Dave Snell. And then Thursday, we've got Kelly Stanecki. So packed with value week. Again, thank you for coming. Sorry for being a little bit over, but it just shows you when you got more than you can put into an hour, you tend to slip over. With that said, have a great day. See you in 23 hours if we can. And thank you so much, Karl and